Chapter 5. Managers need to understand reality. A leader's task is to define reality. Max Dupree, businessman. Leaders are dealers in hope. Napoleon Bonaparte. Leaders trade in hope. Their essential task is to define reality, indeed to transform and create future realities. Running businesses is about leading people and creating environments in which collective worlds are defined and ways forward revealed and relentlessly pursued. Leaders influence people and deal in the valuable commodity of hope and of what might be. To fulfill their task, managers need to understand reality. This chapter introduces you to management accounting. Management accounting is about helping managers better understand the economic and business realities of firms. We've seen already that financial accounting seeks to help parties outside a firm better understand these realities of firms. But managers are inside a firm. Surely they already know what is really going on in a firm? How could accounting possibly help them? Well, this is the subject of this chapter. We will consider the role of managers as drivers of firms and the key need for managers to understand reality. We will see the challenge managers face to strongly connect to and keep track of costs in a firm. We will also see how time lags are the enemy of managers as they seek to run firms, as well as the challenges faced by managers in leading larger firms. We will consider the role of accounting to potentially support managers to set the way forward for their firms, plan, and then keep things on track, control. A key question to ask ourselves is how can accounting help managers deeply engage with and understand the economic and business realities of their firm? Or might accounting make it more difficult for managers? Managers need to connect to and understand reality if they are going to be able to lead and manage their firms and add value to the various parties interested in their firm. What possible role might accounting play to support managers do this? Managers are drivers, 5.1. Sometimes I wonder whether the world is being run by smart people who are putting us on, or by imbeciles who really mean it. Mark Twain. Arguably, the first internal combustion car was made in 1885 by Carl Benz in Germany. It had 3 wheels, including one at the front, with which to steer. At the time, it was sometimes called a horseless buggy or a horseless carriage because it did not need a horse to move it. Initially, cars were very expensive and few could afford to buy them. However, Henry Ford had an idea. He set up the Ford Motor Company in 1903 to build a car for the ordinary person. In other words, for someone like you and me. He thought cars could be made more cheaply by breaking down the tasks to make a car into small elements. The skills required to do each element would be straightforward, and people could quickly get very good at doing these specific skills. He saw that efficiencies in making cars could be possible through a highly refined division of labour. He saw the opportunity to produce cars more cheaply, which he thought would mean more people could buy them, which in turn would mean his production line could produce more cars even more cheaply, and so on. He was right. He launched the Model T Ford in 1908 for US $950. Over the coming decades, he sold over 15 million Model T Fords in the United States alone. Because of Henry Ford's idea, cars became common throughout the United States, and this trend has spread throughout the world. There are now thought to be about 500 million cars in the world. all the difference in the world. Most of us have grown up travelling in cars, perhaps having started out being strapped into a baby capsule. However, as any teenager knows, there is all the difference in the world between being a passenger in a car and first hopping behind the wheel and being a driver. All the difference in the world. The driver has the steering wheel, accelerator and brake. Passengers have none of these. The driver of a car must make decisions all the time about where the car is going and needs to make sure it safely gets there. Some drivers are certainly better at doing this than others. There are some skills involved in driving cars. Being a passenger requires none of these skills. The passenger just sits in the car and goes along for the ride. Many parties outside a firm have genuine interests in what a firm does. These include equity and debt providers of a firm, as well as employees, customers, suppliers, competitors, regulators, taxation authorities, and the general community. But none of these people are driving the firm. They are merely passengers. They may at times attempt to influence managers of a firm in some of their decisions, just as backseat drivers can sometimes try to influence drivers in cars. But at the end of the day, only the managers of a firm are sitting behind the steering wheel, pressing the accelerator and brakes and calling the shots. Managers are the ones making decisions about where their firm is going and who are responsible for making sure it gets there. Managers, and only managers, have responsibility for running or managing a business. To do this, they need information about their business that helps them connect to and deeply understand the economic and business realities of their firm. They need to know what is really going on in their business so they can make decisions and run the firm each day. We saw in Chapter 2 that firms are required to follow various regulations when producing accounting information, generally for parties external to a firm. Given the firm must produce this information anyway, it would be great if managers could use this information to run the business as well. Invariably, firms produce a whole lot of accounting information for managers in addition to what is provided to external users. In this chapter and in the next 3 chapters, we're going to consider why firms do this and what sort of information they may often provide to managers. We will also consider whether managers can use this information to better understand the economic and business realities of their firm, to know what is really going on in their firm. Understand reality. A leader, an individual who created an alchemy of vision that moved people from where they were to places that they have never been before. Henry Kissinger. A key takeout for us from this chapter is that managers need to understand reality. They need to understand deeply the economic and business realities of their firms. How can they do this? What can help them connect to the realities of what is really going on in their firms? How can they personally engage deeply with and understand the economic and business realities of their firm and serve the needs of a range of interested parties in their firm? Equity and debt providers to a firm, employees, customers, suppliers, competitors, regulation, taxation authorities, the general community, and, of course, themselves, by using the resources of their firm to add value. How can accounting help them do this? How can accounting help them better connect to reality? Indeed, can accounting do this? Or can it equally make it more difficult for managers to connect to reality, to the economic and business realities of their firm? This is the key issue we will be exploring when looking at management accounting. It is possible for you to form a range of views about this issue. Many people do. Managers are in the driver's seat of their firms. So what do? Well, drivers of cars must decide where they are going to go. They must select their desired destination among all the many journeys they could take. Once they have done this, They then need to decide the route they plan to take, perhaps referring to their handy GPS to guide them. They then need to head out on their trip and make many decisions on the way, such as which road to turn into and how fast to go. They will need to fill the petrol tank from time to time, have the car serviced periodically, decide whether to brake at an orange light or accelerate through, whether to exceed the speed limit on a stretch of road, and when to turn the headlights on as darkness starts to set in. In the same way, managers need to decide where they are going to take their firm. They need a vision for the future, developing this from a range of competing options. They then need to make plans, and if they want to make their vision for the future and their plans a reality, they need to communicate them to and to inspire those who are going to be relied on to implement them. Also, managers will need to monitor actual performance against the objectives that they have set and make sure things keep on track, and as necessary, keep changing the track in the light of experience. To succeed, managers of a firm need a deep understanding of the economic and business realities of their firm. They are full-time inside their firm, and they are running it. They need detailed information that is current and up-to-date. Indeed, they have the power to ask for whatever information they like from within their firm, and they do. Yet how can this accounting information help them? In leading businesses, managers face a range of challenges. In the next section, we will consider several of these challenges and how accounting might be able to help managers deal with them. 5.2 Challenges for Managers. That most delicious of all privileges, spending other people's money. John Randolph. Some key challenges managers face are keeping track of costs in a firm, responding quickly to changes in their firms, and staying connected to reality on the ground, especially when leading larger firms. In this section, we will see how accounting may have a role to support managers to meet these challenges. A key area for managers is to keep track of costs in a firm. Most of us are very good at spending the money of other people. As teenagers living at home, we can be very good at bleeding our parents dry. I know I was. Since we do not pay the gas and electricity bills, 30-minute showers, leaving lights and electronic equipment on all night, having a heater spurting out heat with a window open nearby in winter, well, who cares? Spending money on music lessons, dancing lessons, perhaps on a school's history and French tour to Europe, and driving parents' cars around can often be done by teenagers without much thought to the cost. The reason for this is that we are not paying for it ourselves. Yet the moment we leave home and see our first gas and electricity bill, our perspectives tend to change with a thud. Indeed, with quite a thud. We now must pay this bill ourselves. Suddenly a huge gas and electricity bill means something. It means not being able to buy enough food or pay for the next music festival tickets or go skiing at Thredbo. Suddenly we have meetings with our flatmates to discuss the latest gas and electricity bill. Instantly our perspectives have changed. In firms, people are spending the money of other people, not their own money. Like teenagers living at home with our parents, there can be a natural tendency for us to approach spending the money of other people differently to the way we might spend our own. Costs tend to increase in firms significantly over time if managers do not keep a tight eye on them. Indeed, a very tight eye on them. However, many firms are quite complex. They can involve hundreds or thousands of employees doing a whole range of different things. They can provide a wide range of products and services involving all sorts of assets. A firm can have a lot of different activities spread over a wide range of locations. How do managers keep track of costs in their firm? How do they connect to and deeply engage with this important aspect of a business. We will look at this issue in Chapter 6. We will look at how accounting might help managers better understand key relationships between various types of costs in their firm, and the relationships between costs and other aspects of their firm, such as sales volumes and profits. These are all designed to help managers keep track of costs in their business and make sure those in a firm are spending other people's money in a way that supports the direction managers have set for their business and fulfills the firm's obligations to meet the needs of a range of parties with genuine interests in their firm. Having a deep understanding and feel for the key cost relationships in a firm is critical for managers of a firm. However, it is not enough. There is much more to managing a firm, to driving it forward in such a way as to add value and to contribute to the needs of a range of interested parties in a firm. Another challenge for managers is to respond and do things in their firm given the constant, ongoing and real-time nature of business. This can be particularly challenging when managing larger and more decentralised firms. Indeed, we will see one of the enemies of managers are time lags between when something happens in their firm and when they find out about it. Time lags. Time lags can make the task of driving firms challenging for managers. Driving or managing firms requires time lags to be as short as possible between when something happens in a firm and when managers know about it and its effects on a firm. I once renovated the bathrooms in my home. We installed Methven's Satin Jet shower heads and shower mixers in the bathrooms. As we know, shower mixers blend the hot and cold water together for us. However, before shower mixers were developed, we had to mix the hot and cold water together by adjusting each of the hot and cold water taps separately in the shower. And there would often be quite a lag between when we turned the hot water tap to increase the amount of hot water and when the extra hot water came out of the shower head. So we would tend to overcompensate and turn the hot water tap on too strongly. When eventually the water coming out of the shower head was too hot, overcompensate by turning down the hot water tap and increase the cold water tap too much. And after a lag, the shower would be too cold, and so on. Because of the lags between turning the hot or cold water taps and changing the temperature of the water coming out of the shower head, there would tend to be a bit of adjustment before we could get the shower temperature right. A similar issue is faced by planes landing at New Zealand's Wellington Airport in bad weather. Like Chicago in the United States, Wellington is known as the Windy City. Planes landing at Wellington Airport can often experience strong wind shear, which is when the wind blows sideways across the runway. When planes land at Wellington Airport in high winds, they can get buffeted around quite a bit. Looking out a passenger's window, you can sometimes find yourself looking right down the runway we are supposed to be heading towards. Also, the plane can often bounce around quite a bit. Because I was usually in planes of a reasonable size, there is a lag of a few seconds between when the pilot adjusts the flaps of the plane to allow for the movement in the plane as the result of a wind gust, and when the plane starts to respond to the change in the flaps. By this time, the wind gusts may have changed again, so the pilot adjusts the flaps again. There is a lag of a few seconds. The plane adjusts, and so on. Because of the lags, there is a tendency for the plane to over-adjust in the variable and changing winds at Wellington Airport. So we can find ourselves moving around quite a bit as we approach the runway. In managing a business, time lags are important. The shorter the time lags, the quicker the response and the less shifting around and the closer to target we can keep things. Long time lags between when something happens in a business and when managers find out about it make it much more difficult for managers to run their firms and quickly respond to surprises and changes in a firm and its environment. Publicly available financial statements by listed companies in Australia, New Zealand and many other countries are usually provided annually, often within about 60 to 90 days after the end of each year. More brief 6-monthly accounts are usually provided a month or two after the middle of each year. This may be fine for parties external to a firm, who are passengers rather than drivers of a firm, but for managers of a firm this is no good. They need to respond quickly to what is happening in their firms because they are in the driver's seat of the firm. Managers want much more frequent and up-to-date information. They want it real-time, daily, weekly or monthly, not every year or 6 months. Managers receive much more up-to-date accounting information on their firms than is provided to external parties. However, providing accounting information to managers is not free. It takes time, effort and costs money to get accounting information together. The benefits of providing information to managers need to be compared to the costs of providing it. And the benefits of accounting information to managers are strongly connected to how timely it is, which enables them to react and do something to impact on the realities of their firms. The more timely the information, the better it is for managers. Time lags are not a manager's friend. We will now see that the bigger the firms and the more decision making that is pushed down the management hierarchy, the bigger the challenge for managers, and the bigger the challenge for accounting to be able to help managers know what is really going on in their firms. Bigger challenges for larger firms. The larger a firm, the greater the need managers have for relevant and timely information. In a small firm, a manager can more easily stay close to its customers, employees, suppliers, and to the details of its activities. As firms get larger, this becomes a physical impossibility for a manager or for a management team to stay close to everything going on in a firm. I was chairman of a business called Arthur Ellis for a few years. Arthur Ellis had some well-established brands in New Zealand, such as Fairy Down, Zone and Great Outdoors. It also distributed Columbia and Timberland products in New Zealand. At one board meeting, the chief executive proposed centralising various warehousing activities. A range of cost savings and other benefits were forecast from doing this. These changes were implemented, but it gradually became clear that the forecast benefits were proving difficult to realise. Every 3 months, the board of directors would have a barbecue lunch provided by the firm with the warehouse, factory and head office staff in Christchurch. I appreciated having the opportunity of speaking informally with the firm's staff. I remember asking those working in the warehouse how the changes were working out. After some initial reluctance, the warehouse staff told me some specific aspects of the changes that were not working out so well from their perspective. Some of the messages they were giving me were quite different to the messages I was getting from the board papers and helped partly explain why we were finding it difficult to gain the expected benefits from the change. I was also responsible for an investment in Robin Hood Industries, a company that produced Robin Hood range hoods and super tubs. Although I was not a director of the company, I usually attended 1 or 2 board meetings a year as a guest when key plans and strategies were being reviewed. I would also usually take the opportunity to see what changes were taking place in the operations of the firm. At one board meeting, the chief executive proposed to close the painting operation in the factory and to instead buy pre-painted metal for its range hoods and super tubs. This would mean bending the pre-painted metal into the shapes of the range hoods and super tubs rather than paint them after having bent the metal into the required shapes. Naturally, a key concern with this change was that when the pre-painted metal was being bent into the shapes of the various products, the paint might be scratched. While the changes were being implemented, we had a walk through the factory to see how things were progressing. I saw the conveyor belt that was to feed the pre-painted metal sheets into one of the machines that bent them into the shape of the products. It had black rollers. I asked the chief executive, who was with me, about these and whether they would scratch the paint on the metal. He told me the black rollers were padded and soft. I walked over to them and touched them, something the chief executive presumably had never done, and they were hard metal rollers. It is difficult for managers and company directors to deeply engage with and understand the realities of their firms. Much can slip past. By the way, there were quite a few teething problems with pre-painted metal being scratched in the metal bending processes in the firm, but these were quickly resolved and the processes proved robust. How do managers know what is really going on in their firms? As businesses get larger, it gets more difficult. Managers get further and further removed from the day-to-day activities of their firms, and the role of information becomes increasingly critical. In Chapter 8, we will look at ways in which accounting might be able to provide information in a largely financial form that can support managers get closer to what is really going on in their firms and help highlight what is critical for managers to focus on in their firms and what can be safely ignored. We as humans have limited lifespans, limited capacities, and limited hours in the day. In Chapter 8, we will consider how accounting can be used to help managers know where to direct their attention to areas in the business that are critical to achieving the objectives of the firm and where actions by managers will be the most effective. Managers face many challenges in driving their firms forward. They need to keep a close eye on costs. They need to respond quickly to surprises and changes in their firms. They need to ensure they know what is really going on in their businesses, and this becomes increasingly difficult the larger the firm and the more remote senior managers are from the front line. In larger firms, the responsibility for making some decisions can be pushed down to those closer to the front line. This means those making these decisions are closer to what is really going on in a firm, which can help them stay connected to the economic and business realities a firm faces each day. However, this raises further issues for senior managers to ensure these decisions are made in a way that supports the overall direction of a firm and meets the needs of various parties with an interest in a firm. This leads us to a central responsibility of managers: to decide where forward is, that is, to set the direction of a firm. We will look at this in the next section.